Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I, 35 male, grew up as the oldest of 3 kids in what you'd call a dysfunctional household. My dad was an alcoholic who'd swing between being passed out on the couch and screaming at us for breathing too loud. My mom, well, she was there physically but chicked out mentally, probably her way of coping with dad's issues. Being the oldest meant I had to be the responsible one. I got straight A's, never missed curfew, and basically raised my younger siblings. Meanwhile, my brother, just a year younger than me, lived like he was starring in his own teenage rebellion movie. He had a new girlfriend every month, threw parties when our parents were away, and I'm pretty sure he tried every substance known to mankind before hitting senior year. He never faced any consequences. Mom would just dismiss his behavior as typical boy stuff, while I'd get grounded for a week if my room wasn't spotless. It was like living in some twisted parallel universe, where following rules was a punishable offense. High school was mostly bearable because I had drama club and a small group of friends who were into gaming. We'd meet up after school to play the latest releases. This was back when multiplayer meant actually being in the same room together. Those few hours away from home were my sanctuary. Things changed when I finally saved up enough from my part-time job to buy a used car. It wasn't much, just an old sedan that made weird noises when it rained, but it was mine. I mainly used it to drive my siblings to school and myself to drama club meetings. That's when my brother's true colors really showed. Every single time I tried to leave for my gaming sessions or drama club, he'd pull his favorite stunt. Every time I started the car, he would jump on the hood, grinning like a maniac. I would get out and tell him to get off, but he would just taunt me, daring me to make him move. This would go on and on. I'd get out, chase him off, get back in, and there he'd be again, sprawled across my hood like some demented hood ornament. I tried getting our mom involved, but she would just tell us to work it out between ourselves. My brother would laugh at this, clearly enjoying the fact that he could get away with anything. This went on for months, every single time. It got to the point where I'd start feeling anxious hours before I needed to leave, knowing what was coming. Then came that day. I'd had a particularly rough week. Dad had been on a bender, Mom was more checked out than usual, and I'd nearly missed a drama club performance because of my brother's antics. As expected, there he was on my hood, wearing that stupid grin I'd grown to hate. I went through the usual routine of chasing him off, but this time, when he jumped back on, something in me just snapped. I reversed out of the driveway, his grin faltering slightly but still there. He probably thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. He tried to act tough, telling me I wouldn't do anything. I just told him to watch me. I shifted into drive and hit the gas. Not fast, just enough to make the car lurch forward. His smile disappeared faster than our dad's paycheck at a liquor store. He started yelling at me to stop saying it wasn't funny anymore. I just asked him sarcastically if it wasn't funny now, enjoying the tables being turned. I accelerated a bit more, heading toward the main road. He was holding onto the hood for dear life, his knuckles white and his face a beautiful shade of terror I'd never seen before. He started screaming apologies, begging me to stop. I just laughed, telling him I couldn't hear him over how hilarious this was. By the time I made the turn toward the main road, he was crying. Actually crying. Those weren't the fake tears he'd used to get out of trouble with Mom. These were real, genuine tears of fear. He kept screaming promises that he'd never do it again, pleading with me to let him off. I finally stopped, letting him scramble off the hood. He ran home like he was being chased by demons, stumbling every few steps. When I got back home later, Mom tried to laugh it off as just another one of our pranks, clearly in her usual denial mode. My brother couldn't look me in the eye for weeks, and he never touched my car again. I'm a 13-year-old girl who lives with my mom and stepdad. My biological father passed away when I was just 2, and my mom met my stepdad at a grief support group 3 years later. He had lost his wife to cancer around the same time my dad died. They really connected over their shared experiences, and honestly, He's been the best father figure I could ask for. I know some people might find it weird that my stepdad is black and my mom and I are white, but it's never been an issue for us. Well, not until last week when we had this absolutely insane encounter at the mall. My stepdad and I were at the shopping center because I needed new shoes for track practice. Mom was supposed to come with us, but she caught a stomach bug and had to stay home. We had just finished buying my shoes and were heading to the food court to grab some lunch when this middle-aged woman started following us. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then she kept getting closer, practically breathing down our necks. My stepdad noticed too and turned around to see what was going on. The woman approached me with fake concern in her voice, asking if I was okay and needed help. When I told her I was fine, she pressed on, telling me I could let her know if I was in trouble and that she was there to help. My stepdad realized what she was implying and tried to calm things down by explaining that he was my stepfather and we were just shopping for shoes. But the woman wouldn't have any of it. She scoffed and said she didn't believe him, claiming she'd been watching him drag a poor white girl around the mall. By this point, people were starting to stare. I was getting really upset because this woman was making my stepdad out to be some kind of criminal. I tried to defend him by shouting that he really was my stepdad and telling her to leave us alone. But she just talked over me, telling me I was obviously terrified and that she was calling the police right then. She pulled out her phone and actually called 911. My stepdad stayed remarkably calm, probably because he's unfortunately dealt with this kind of racism before. He tried to reason with her, offering to show her family photos on his phone, but she just screamed at him not to come near her and called him a kidnapper. A mall security guard came over to see what the commotion was about. I tried explaining the situation, telling him that this woman was harassing us and wouldn't leave us alone despite this being my stepdad. When the guard asked the woman what the problem was, she insisted my stepdad was kidnapping me, using our different races as proof we couldn't be related. I pulled out my phone to call my mom, thinking she could clear this up. But before I could dial, this crazy woman grabbed my arm and tried to yank me away from my stepdad, telling me to come with her and that she'd keep me safe until the police arrived. I tried to pull away, but she had a death grip on my arm. When I resisted, she actually started dragging me across the floor. I lost my balance and fell, and she just kept pulling. My face was literally scraping against the mall floor while I screamed. My stepdad shouted at her to let me go, telling her she was hurting me. The security guard immediately jumped in to help, but Karen was like a woman possessed. She kept screaming about saving me from kidnapping while literally assaulting me herself. The whole thing was completely insane. Thankfully, the police arrived really quickly, probably because we were in a busy mall and multiple people had called 911 by this point. 2 officers ran up just as I managed to break free from Karen's grip. They commanded everyone to freeze and demanded to know what was happening. Karen immediately started telling them about the supposed kidnapping, but I cut her off, explaining that this was my stepdad and that she had just assaulted me. I showed them my scraped face and the bruises forming on my arm. The security guard backed up our story, and several witnesses came forward to describe how Karen had attacked me. My mom arrived about 10 minutes later, still sick but furious. She had all our family documentation ready on her phone. Marriage certificate, adoption papers, family photos, everything. Karen tried to claim she was just being a concerned citizen, but the police weren't having any of it. They told her she was under arrest for assault of a minor, attempted kidnapping, and filing a false police report. They led her away in handcuffs while she wailed about how she was just trying to help. My mom insisted on pressing charges, and we later found out this wasn't even the first time Karen had pulled something like this. Apparently, she had a history of harassing interracial families at that mall. She ended up getting banned from the mall for life and is facing criminal charges. My stepdad was pretty shaken up by the whole thing, but he's doing better now. We're actually planning to use the videos that witnesses took of the incident for sensitivity training at his workplace. He's a diversity consultant for big companies. At least some good came out of this crazy situation. My face healed up fine, though I did have to miss a few days of track practice. The bruises on my arm took longer to fade, but they're finally gone now. The whole thing was terrifying, but it made me realize how lucky I am to have a stepdad who stayed so calm and strong through such an awful situation. I just hope Karen learns her lesson this time. I've been working at this local restaurant for about 3 years now, starting as a server and working my way up to shift supervisor. It's a decent place, not too fancy, but we get good tips and regular customers. The general manager hired me when I was struggling to find work after dropping out of college due to financial issues. I needed to help support my mom after dad passed away, so a full-time job was more important than a degree at that point. Everything was going fine until last month. It was a busy Friday evening when our general manager realized we were running low on some essential supplies. He called our partner restaurant across town and arranged for me to pick up some items we needed. The general manager told me to drive to the other location to pick up the supplies, emphasizing that I needed to be quick since we were swamped that night. When I asked if I should clock out first, he insisted I stay clocked in since I was doing this for the restaurant. I got into my car and headed across town. The rain was coming down pretty hard, but I knew we needed those supplies badly. I was about halfway there when it happened. This huge pickup truck ran a red light and T-boned my car on the driver's side. Everything after that is kind of a blur. Lots of sirens, paramedics, and eventually waking up in the hospital. The doctors told me I had severe spinal trauma and would need surgery. That's when the real nightmare began. Instead of supporting me, my general manager started playing games. When I confronted him, he coldly told me that since this happened off restaurant premises, they weren't liable. I reminded him that I was on the clock and following his direct orders, but he dismissed this as irrelevant, saying I was driving my own vehicle and my insurance should cover it. When I explained that I only had liability insurance and would be facing thousands in medical bills, he callously replied that it wasn't his problem and suggested I should have been more careful. I was in shock. Here I was lying in a hospital bed facing major surgery and potentially permanent damage to my spine, and my boss was trying to wash his hands of any responsibility. The medical bills were already piling up, and I had no idea how I was going to pay for them. That's when one of my co-workers visited me in the hospital. They encouraged me not to let the manager bully me, explaining that this was definitely a workers' compensation case and assuring me they had my back. When I mentioned that the manager was refusing to give me the workers' comp information, my co-worker revealed they had taken photos of all the workers' comp posters in the office and offered to send them to me right away. Armed with this information, I contacted the workers' compensation office directly. They were incredibly helpful and immediately opened a case. Within days, an investigator was assigned. When the investigator contacted my general manager, his attitude changed completely. He tried to backtrack, claiming there must have been some misunderstanding and that they were always going to help. I quickly pointed out that this contradicted what he had said in the hospital. The investigator then laid out the evidence. I was on the clock following direct instructions and performing duties for the restaurant, making this a clear workers' compensation case. The investigation revealed that the general manager had a history of trying to dodge workers' comp claims. He had done similar things to other employees, but most of them had been too afraid to fight back. The district manager got involved after the investigator's report came out. The district manager contacted me to review the situation, declaring that the general manager's behavior was completely unacceptable and promising a full internal investigation. 2 weeks later, while I was recovering from my surgery, the district manager called again with updates. They told me that they had terminated the general manager and approved all my medical expenses, promising continued coverage for my recovery and rehabilitation. They assured me my job would be waiting when I was ready to return. When I asked about lost wages during my recovery, they confirmed that workers' comp would cover that too, adding that they were implementing new training protocols to prevent similar situations. The general manager tried to appeal his termination, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Not only did I get full coverage for my medical expenses and lost wages, but several former employees came forward with similar stories, leading to a complete overhaul of the restaurant's safety and compensation policies. My surgery was successful, and although recovery is slow, I'm getting better every day. The workers' compensation coverage means I can focus on healing without worrying about bills. As for my former general manager, I heard he's having trouble finding work in the restaurant industry after word got out about how he treated his employees. I still can't believe he thought he could get away with denying a legitimate workers' compensation claim. But thanks to my co-workers' support and the workers' comp investigators, justice was served. The new general manager is actually decent and has already implemented better safety protocols for all employees. My son grew up with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. He learned to use what others might see as challenges to his advantage. His rapid-fire speech and enthusiasm that some found overwhelming became his secret weapons. Now that he's in college, these traits have evolved into something truly spectacular to witness. Throughout high school, my son was known for standing up to bullies, not with his fists, but with his words. He'd talk so fast and with such infectious enthusiasm that they'd often end up confused and walking away. His teachers would tell me how he'd defend younger students in the cafeteria by simply overwhelming troublemakers with his rapid-fire positivity. Today I got to witness him put these skills to excellent use. He's been setting up his next semester's online college classes, which means answering calls from unknown numbers, usually from academic advisors or the financial aid office. Unfortunately, this also means dealing with the occasional scammer. I was in the kitchen making lunch when I heard his phone ring. He looked at the screen and shrugged, putting it on speaker as he usually does when working at the dining table. The scammer started with their typical opening line claiming to be from the bank's fraud prevention department. They mentioned detecting suspicious activity on my son's checking account. My son's eyes lit up, and I knew what was coming. He launched into his signature high-speed, sugar rush speaking mode. He enthusiastically thanked the caller, gushing about how amazing it was that they caught the suspicious activity since he hadn't made any unusual purchases. He went on to compare them to a superhero and praised them for their work during the holiday season. The scammer tried to interject, but my son was just getting started. He continued his excited ramble, expressing genuine amazement at their job of protecting people's money and stopping criminals. Then he switched gears and started asking about employment opportunities. He fired off question after question about their training program, education requirements, age restrictions, work arrangements, and starting salary. There was a long, awkward silence on the other end. I had to stuff my fist in my mouth to keep from laughing. When the scammer tried to redirect the conversation back to the suspicious transaction, my son called them out on their rudeness. He gave them a lecture about ignoring his questions and not showing basic manners, asking if their mother hadn't taught them proper politeness. As the scammer attempted to regain control of the conversation, my son expressed his disappointment. He told them how he'd thought they were an awesome person helping others, but now he saw they were being super rude. He even threatened to tell his mom, who was right there listening. In a last desperate attempt, the scammer tried to get back to their script and asked for his account number. My son shut them down completely, declaring they'd lost their chance because of their meanness. He pointed out that legitimate bank employees are both nice and never ask for account numbers over the phone, effectively calling out their scam. He finished by calling them a jerk and hanging up. He ended the call and immediately burst into laughter. I was already crying from trying to hold in mine. He proudly pointed out how he'd kept them occupied for 5 whole minutes, time they couldn't spend scamming someone else. I couldn't help but give him a high five. He's turned what some might consider his challenges into a superpower, using his natural enthusiasm and rapid speech to confuse and frustrate scammers. He's done this several times now, each time perfecting his technique of sounding like an overexcited kid while simultaneously calling them out on their scam. Later that day, he added the number to his growing list of scammer numbers that he shares with his college's student services office to warn other students. He might not have gotten the job at the bank's fraud prevention department, but he's definitely preventing fraud in his own unique way. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.